And good afternoon, everybody. We are live, and welcome to today's CaptureCast, where we're going to explore navigating post-census conversations with your leadership. So the class is here, gang. Everybody is on campus. If you're a good enrollment manager, you're probably sitting back counting heads and beds and making sure that everybody is happy for the first 2 weeks, and you made it. Congratulations. I see the posts on the Facebook pages and on LinkedIn. Seems like everybody did really well this year. So really proud of all of you. And even if you didn't make your stuff, I think that's really good that you guys made it through. So for those who don't know me, I'm Chris Harris, Senior Enrollment Strategist here at Capture Higher Ed. And on behalf of our marketing team, welcome to today's live broadcast. And as always, if you have questions or comments, please leave them in the comments section. And if we can't get to the questions today, I'll email you back tomorrow. But before we get started, I would like to extend our thoughts and prayers to those who have been affected by Hurricane Idalia yesterday and today, and encourage everyone to give to their favorite charity to help those who are in need, for whatever reason. So today, we're going to be looking to answer these questions. One, how do we build our census story into a more meaningful conversation? Two, what type of analytics should we be discussing beyond the normal funnel metrics? Three, how do we navigate the difference between too little and too much information? And lastly, how do we set the stage for goal setting for the future? So for those of you who don't know or are new to the CaptureCast, welcome. We're glad that you have joined us. For more than 12 years, Capture has been a leading recruitment marketing company serving the higher education sector. Our mission is simple. We help institutions identify, convert, and enroll the right students. We do our work by leveraging the industry's only behavioral intelligence platform that features the industry's most reliable and accurate predictive models, Apply and Enroll. And our team of experts, who you're going to meet two of those experts today, who design and execute the best recruitment and marketing strategies that are tailored to meet your needs on your campus. We are a totally managed service that walks alongside you, not in front of you, not behind you, but hand in hand to make sure that your team reaches your goal every day. We do it in a transparent and fun way at the same time. So let's get started today. Today's agenda: why are we here? What are we doing here? Two, conducting a thorough analysis. Three, we're going to check your assumptions. Four, we're going to tell the full story. Five, including that plan to move forward. And six, we'll review what we learned today and get started for fall of 2024, right? So that's what we're going today. We're going to bring in today's special guest. We're going to introduce Kate Howard, Senior Enrollment Advisor. Kate and Andy, another Senior Enrollment Advisor here at Capture. And we'll do some kind of formal, informal introductions, but I am in South Carolina just to show you how global we are. I'm in South Carolina. Kate, you are in Mississippi, correct? And Andy, you're in Arkansas, right? Did I get that right? No. Andy, where are you?
Kansas.
Kansas, that's right. Arkansas,
right.
Kansas, it's the same thing, right?
Close.
Just to give it a little perspective, we were kind of chatting just before we came live today. And between the three of us, gang, not to say that we're old, but there's about 70 years of on-campus experience of sitting and doing the admissions piece, helping students enroll on our college campuses between the three of us. So I'm not going to say how old we truly are, but we are young at heart. I think that's where we are. So, Kate, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get Andy's background too.
Hey, absolutely. Thanks, Chris, and thanks for letting us join today. Excited to talk about this topic. But as you mentioned, my name is Kate Howard. I serve as one of the Senior Enrollment Advisors here at Capture Higher Ed. My prior experience on campus has been at mid to large regional institutions, public in nature. I spent about 22 years on the campus side of the desk, and the first 13 or 14 of those were at the University of Memphis, which also happens to be my alma mater, and a Capture client, and so that was exciting. Spent some time as the recruitment, admissions, and orientation person on that campus, and then moved into a chief enrollment officer role at the University of Southern Mississippi here in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, where I served as the chief enrollment officer for about 6 years before heading over to Capture. So in that realm, had a little bit more of the holistic enrollment management, 6 different offices that came together to really create an enrollment enterprise. So excited to be here and hang out with you and Andy today, and hope to answer some questions about how those census conversations can go, and we can make those a little easier for our partners.
Thanks, Kate. Andy, tell us what's going on in Kansas.
Sure. Yeah. Well, we're not getting any hurricanes, so we're okay. But Yeah, my experience in higher ed is almost the flip side of the coin from Kate. So I've done 17 years on campuses, and now I'm at Capture in my first year. Predominantly my experience is in private, religiously affiliated institutions that most would consider on the smaller side of things. And so, but I've also had 6 years as a client of Capture before coming to work here. And so, yeah, thanks for letting me join, and I'm happy to be a part of the conversation.
That's awesome. I think that's one of the best things that you guys bring to the table too, not just your knowledge of enrollment management and everything that goes into helping students go to college. I think that was the biggest thing that we all really worked on was that you understood what we do on a day-to-day basis and actually use the product coming in. So great. So as always, as we get started in our Capture Cast, we like to do a quick poll question. So Emma, who is in Louisville, who is producing today's Capture Cast, Emma, could you post today's poll for us so that we can get everybody's input here? But today, 22-23 recruitment is in the books. How'd you do? Did you reach your goal enrollment goals? Everybody pick one. You reached your head count and your net tuition revenue. Some people reached that head count but didn't get the net tuition revenue. We didn't reach head count, but we did hit our net revenue. And we did not hit either. I think I've been on a campus that's done 3 of the 4. I've never not hit one of the 2 kind of situation. But Andy and Kate, what are you guys hearing from some folks that you talk to, not just clients, but everybody else that's out there?
Yeah, I think for me, it's been a real mixed bag, depending on geographic location and the different partners that I'm working alongside. But a lot of our folks are looking up, which is up slightly. So there's no major jump. I see Andy nodding his head, so he obviously is hearing some of the same things. But I do think there are some schools who are still suffering post-pandemic, maybe not hitting those headcount goals, but balancing that net tuition revenue and sort of falling in the middle, a little bit more like what you described there, Chris, and your experiences. Like you got one, you didn't get the other.
Yeah, very much the same. I'm hearing, for the most part, slightly up, I think is probably the most common, flat to up a little bit. And I always figured if I'm up 1, I'm up, right? So, that's kind of what I would say is the trend. And what I'm glad I'm not hearing, I'm not hearing anybody that's down significantly. The ones that I know that are slightly under, they just came in slightly under goals. And so right around that midpoint seems to be what I'm hearing the most.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing too. I heard some folks that are mildly up. There's a couple campuses that did really, really well this year too. And then there was a few that were just under, but they prepared for it. And I think, that kind of goes to kind of what we're going to talk about today is how you can prepare ahead of time so that, there isn't this giant budget crunch at the end or anything else like that too. So Emma, let's go ahead and post up our results. There we go. So we had some folks make it a little bit of a mixed bag there. So I think that's pretty indicative to what we're talking about. And I think that's, some of the conversations now as we move forward and as we get into the slide deck today, why are we reporting to the board? We look at the importance of the board. When we looked at it and started as a marketing team, we started looking at what different things the board does and how they do it. And we came up with this, David Letterman-ish top 10 list. And everything from, helping the board understand the metrics that are out there, the resource allocation they can help with, stakeholder communications and crisis preparedness, those kinds of things that some of our colleges, universities out there that are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. But when we first started chatting about the webinar, and Kate, I'm going to come to you first. One of the things we talked about was transparency. You were very much into transparency with data and things like that. And I think it's indicative even more so at a state institution, because you're dealing with state dollars a lot of times. You're not only answering to your president, your board, but you're also all those people who are paying taxes at the same time. So so what do you mean when you talk about transparency, and what level of transparency do you think we need to be giving our boards as we talk with them coming up here in September?
Yeah, Chris, I think maybe when we began talking about it, and I mentioned sort of the notion of being transparent about where things are, where they're falling out, or how you anticipate numbers coming in and those sorts of things. For me, the biggest piece is that you paint a clear picture. So you paint a clear picture of the landscape, you paint a clear picture of kind of the things that you've done, the opportunities that are ahead of you, the threats that are posed at any given point, and you share those. And so certainly what you don't want to do is create a complaint list or all the lack of resources or things that often come along with some of these pieces that you see here. This top 10 list is heavy. And so when you think about those sorts of things, what you do want to make sure that you do is create a case for yourself, your institution, your staffing, those models, and create a space where people understand what you are working with, what you're up against, and how that data will all ultimately play into where things fall out as you get to the census point. And so I think and we'll get into it a little bit later. Data can be overwhelming to the board. So I think figuring out how to create a very clear picture that is truthful in nature. So a lot of times we tend to want to sugarcoat things, and there's nothing worse when you get to the end when it's truly about net tuition revenue and the numbers, the sheer numbers coming in. It's really hard to mask those. And so I think leaning into that a little bit throughout the process, which we'll talk about a lot about throughout this presentation today.
No, Andy, it's interesting because you and I have served on a bunch of private college campuses, so it's a little bit different in that concept sometimes. But what we're seeing too in the realm of enrollment management, I checked, inside higher ed jobs, not because I'm looking for a job, boss, but I was checking it for some stats, and there's like 1,200 jobs open right now in what I would term enrollment management on inside higher ed. I mean, it's like vice presidents, deans, associate directors, admissions counselor, data analysts. We're now starting to see data analysts and admissions too. But we're seeing more new board members coming on to college campuses too. So Andy, how important is that the new enrollment leader, if you're a new enrollment leader too, on your campus, you get to know that board and what their needs are and what their wants are prior to, like doing a new board orientation, that kind of thing. Well, how important is that?
Yeah, for me, it was really important. I think especially when you're the chief enrollment officer, you've got to prioritize that relationship and get to know the board. And every board at every school is a little bit different. And that's the thing, right? So I know you think you get to know one and okay, now you understand boards. Well, every school is a little different, and every board member comes with a slightly different agenda. But for me, it was so important to get to know those people because typically they're really invested in the school. They're connected really well. And it was always good to feel like you had a partnership with board members, that they understood the work that you were doing and the needs that you had. And I always tried to understand kind of what their perspective was and what they were looking for. It helps, it's always better to be friends with people and get to know them. And so if you can talk as friends, you can talk about your issues as well.
I think that's important, is that line of communication of what they want to know, how they want to learn, how they want to know it, right? Is it a bunch of, charts, or is it, numbers, or do you want that narrative, that piece? I found that a lot of boards want all of it, and they don't know what they're looking at most of the time. So you try to help them out. And when I was looking back and creating this slide here, I'm always used to providing updates 4 times a year, twice in 2 big time board meetings, and then there was 2 off, subcommittee board meetings that we would do during the year. But we tried to put together some stuff that kind of gives you an idea of what you would be looking at. So in the fall, obviously, you're going to review everything from the previous year. But I think one thing that a lot of enrollment managers forget to do is do the celebration piece. Find that goosebump moment, like, hey, we got 20% more students from the local community, or we reached out and we've started into 52 different 50 states now in 33 different countries and things like that. Find that goosebump moment, or that one story that of a student who has persevered and now they're on your campus, that kind of thing, for the fall. And then obviously, as you go through the entire cycle, you'll see that you're trying to give the board enough information so that at the end of the year, there's no surprises. I think that's the biggest thing. And to your point, Andy, you just mentioned that every board is different in their approach, what they want, and I've seen it meet twice a year. I've seen it meet 3 times a year. How important is it you to establish, again, those relationships with the subcommittee members and the chair before you even get into the big board kind of thing? I mean, let's really dive into, what kinds of conversations those need to be.
Yeah, for me, that subcommittee, either the enrollment and marketing, or kind of however it's built, that subcommittee was, those are your people, right? Those are the ones that you've got to build that connection with. And when I was thinking, what data do I share? What story does the data tell? That was the group that I would spend the most time working with on that. I would give them more data than typically the larger board. And so I was always trying to, the chair of the subcommittee that covers enrollment was outside of, the president, outside of, any directors that reported to me. One of the key relationships that I knew was an important piece. And that person does so much advocating for enrollment to the board, especially if budgets are tight, but you need to spend some money. That's somebody right there that you really need to help advocate for and help explain kind of trends and macro and the things like that. Because you mentioned earlier, Chris, board members are passionate and they want to help, but they don't always know the best way to help. But that committee, they need to know how open communication. I always try to let them know what do we need the most? What's it going to take to grow? How can you help?
Kate, that's interesting. Andy brings up, the subcommittee stuff and doing that, and I itch my head. I'm not sure why. I'm inquisitive. But looking at this slide, switch gears for a second and establish, would this be a good kind of, it's 3 times, this is 4 times a year. I mean, you could do 3 times a year, but what about sharing this type of information with your faculty and your staff? Because one thing that I always hear on college campuses is, we don't know anything about what admissions is doing. We don't know anything about financial aid. We don't know anything what enrollment's doing. Why is my program not doing well? Or why is my program overpopulated? Those kinds of things. How do you feel about sharing this type of information or this level of information with faculty and staff, and even some students, like student government bodies, those kinds of things, to get buy-in, to get help, especially during the yield process?
I think that as a genius in so many ways, Chris, the notion of creating buy-in across campus becomes really important, and it also gives shared ownership. So you're talking about hard conversations sometimes, or like our friends who said they came in, they didn't meet either goal, and what does that look like? Well, if you've had conversations across campus along the way and provided information in ways that folks can help you. And so just like the board, you don't want to overwhelm. I appreciate Andy's talking about sort of the subcommittee level is kind of the group that you can overwhelm a little bit with that information because they're advocating for you in the board. And so you may have a recruitment council or an enrollment management sort of team that is made up of various parties around campus, but more holistically, when you're able to share these sorts of things out with the campus at large and show some benchmarks, and to your point earlier, sort of those big wins, those goosebump moments. The other thing that I think is on this slide that can be really helpful, and you may not be able to gather everyone in the same way you would with a board meeting, but this notion of having outside guests or someone to share their experiences with maybe a positive experience with your financial aid office, or a spot where you can receive help from others. And so I think things like that really soften the conversations, and this is a great model for not just to be used with your board and your presidents and your executive team, but really if you can kind of spread this down and let it infiltrate all the things going on campus, I think it is a creation of buy-in, and it's a creation of buy-in at the board level for them to be able to share positives out maybe differently, and also understand, again, back to that transparency, what may be coming up that isn't always a positive conversation. And so those are really great opportunities at those 4 different time frames, or like you said, sometimes 3 time frames, to go ahead and do that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that we provide enough information that a lot of times folks will get that buy-in, and they'll offer to help. And then you have to coach them up too. So you're not only coaching up your staff, but you're coaching up the rest of the campus too. But what we have learned over time, and big or small school, it doesn't matter. You have to have everybody's buy-in, or at least a lot of buy-in to do that. I was thinking about buy-in last night when I read that article about the University of Nebraska women's volleyball team played in front of 92,000 people last night. Volleyball to me is a foreign entity as a former football player, but what a great atmosphere to play at night under the lights, and have 92,000 people at a volleyball match. That just sounds really cool to me. So getting that campus buy-in is a big deal. I think one of the other things that we need to do is make sure that we're conducting a thorough analysis. So, as recruitment becomes more complex, you're expected to know more. You're expected to know what's going on in the market. You're expected to know what the marketing is doing. You're expected to be able to do the predictive modeling and all that other stuff. And here is just a few of the different things that you need to have, I think, when you're doing your analysis. But Kate, when you look at these nine different KPIs, what other kinds of data points do you share, or do you think would help from a sharing perspective to give some context to the board, to your president as well, and your executive committee?
Sure, I think these are spot on from a campus perspective, and so understanding that, and I appreciate the language about you're expected to sort of know these at the granular level. But the thing that I think that is an additive to this in many ways is sort of what is that national landscape? Can you provide some sort of basis for what you're doing compared to your peers? What is it looking like in the region? How does that play into some of that? And I know we're all familiar with Enrollment Cliff, and we're going to talk about that just a tad bit as well. But that is something that I think that as a key enrollment officer, you do have to know a number of those things in addition to these sort of 9 pieces around your campus, and those KPIs.
I think that's interesting too, Andy, and, being on the smaller campus, sometimes we tend to get really granular. Even enrollment leaders, vice presidents, deans, actually get to work with the counselors a lot of times too. You see them on a more day-to-day basis. So let's flip this a little bit too. We talked about faculty and staff, but looking at this data, what other data points would you give to admissions counselors and your directors to help them with the day-to-day? Because we're really going to, in the next slide, we're going to talk about day-to-day activities, those kinds of things.
Yeah, it'd be different than a lot of the data on here. I would expect my directors to work, financial aid and admissions directors to work with me to know most of these. But the counselors, I was always trying to focus on giving them day-to-day data down to the individual student level. So these are big picture macro data. I would want them to understand that. So in our meetings, we would talk about these, but on the day-to-day, I was always looking to give them data on which students were they recruiting that were interested, or, a hot list, or, which ones did we have goals for? Obviously we want X number of students, but we have goals for this subset. And the other data that I would want them to know is what are we emailing the students you're recruiting right now? And that I chuckle at that because it's harder to do than you think. And there would be times where a counselor would be like, oh, I called a kid and realized that they got this email that I didn't know anything about. So that type of data for the admissions counselors is really important. How are we marketing? Why are we marketing? Why are we sending this? So yeah, you're right. On smaller campuses, as a VP for enrollment, you're doing both. You're working with the counselors, you're working with your directors, you're working with your board, all up and down. And so yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting comparison that we have there. One of the things we do about checking the assumptions then, it's a good time right now for us to kind of take a deep breath and take a look back at what we did. And I'm not going to run through these one by one. I think everybody really knows what they're going to be doing here. And we'll provide a copy of these slides out to everybody who registered for the event today. But, looking back and then what worked and what didn't work, and having an understanding of what those things are, I think is an important part. And the one thing that a lot of people don't do is, looking at behavior. how did that behavior of those families work throughout the year with those messages that you're talking about, Andy, where the 500 emails are flying out every day and nobody knows, and then there's a text message, and then a coach is calling, and then a faculty member is calling, and having all that, what worked and what didn't work. So, Andy, as travel season is about to start in a couple of weeks, right? We're going to go have a long weekend here, and then travel season starts soon. Based upon the state of the student search process, how can we look back to help inform us on where we're going to be traveling this coming year?
For me, this is where we get into, kind of the complexity of where enrollment management is these days. And I got to a point several years ago already where I knew I needed help on that. So that's where, people being data analysts within an admissions office or partner companies like Capture or other ones, they could just analyze the data in ways that I didn't have the capacity to do. I always could, go on a gut feel, but it's always better to go on a data informed gut feel, maybe. So for me, the travel stuff, there's some great tools out there of other companies who have, a handful or more, a team of data scientists to help. And those were worth it. And I always wanted to know, how can I cut down travel? I hated paying staff to drive or fly because I figured they could be building relationships with students. And so I was okay to not travel if the data said it wasn't worthwhile. And I think that was a hard shift. That's a hard shift in enrollment management, is to trust the data and be able to tell people like the board, you know what, we're cutting some of the schools. We maybe didn't go to a small town that you're familiar with because that was going to cost us more students than it was going to gain us in time. So that's the hard part with travel, is we have to do it, but we've got to have the right tools that help us know whether or not we can expect any students from areas.
I think and we take it another step further, Kate, too. So we look at travel, and travel has always been a sticky concept. I, as a former road warrior myself, I love to travel. You get to eat out, eat wings 5-6 days a week. I mean, that's the best part about it. But Kate, when you review the data from the previous year and prepare to set goals for the coming year, we look at number 5, the behavior of prospective students. How does that really play into how you're going to build your messages for next year? What messages worked, when it worked? And I think the other part too is, and I'm going to throw a curveball here, FAFSA. Don't talk a lot about it, but just FAFSA timing is now a major deal for this coming year. So give us some Kate crystal ball work here.
Yes, you stole my thunder. It was the one thing that I was going to talk about. So what we're seeing a ton of, and I think that this is what Andy talked a little bit about some of the predictive analytics, and within Capture specifically, the travel model that we have, the predictive model around which high schools, and then the apply model where we can see where those students are more likely in your suspect pools to apply. We can see all that behavioral data, but what we've heard this year is that the things just happened much earlier, and then they came to a pretty significant slow. And so I think that has been something that's been in the making for several years. And so you touched on it. This is going to be a huge change year for us because we don't know in the market exactly when FAFSA will go live. We know sometime in December. We hope, fingers crossed, that it is in this calendar year, but sometime, hopefully in the month of December. But I do think that processes that we have seen that had sped up really quickly on the front end, where we were already having a hard time measuring from the beginning to the yield, we're going to see those differ even more. And so we're not going to have the same data set that we've had in the past as indicators for student behavior. And so, we're a student that filled out the FAFSA in October, or that subset of students, is not even going to have an opportunity to do so until the very end of the year. It's going to impact your packaging, which then impacts your decision-making, or the decision-making of students. And so all that sounds like it's going to be even more delayed. And so I think we're going to be reliant as enrollment managers and as partners with our enrollment managers on campuses to really look deeper into some of the engagement data that students are having. Are they visiting? Are they coming to your website? What does that look like for you? How are we pushing them through the funnel differently, knowing that we've had this major shift in how we're going to finance our education and what that looks like. So I think that it's going to be an interesting world. And so we're going to have to figure out how to sort of re-message or message in different spots on the calendar, specifically around some of that funnel conversion. So that's something that I know we're getting excited about and gearing up for, and how to help our partners do some of that. But it's something that will happen in this year differently than any before.
Well, even if you look at your KPIs, right? So, everybody used to, we have inquiries and we have applications and we have acceptances and we have deposits. And then the next set of KPIs are, did they file the FAFSA? Did they get their financial aid package? Have they registered for housing? Have they got their meal plan? Do they have their shots done? All those other different, KPIs that are out there as part of the onboarding process, or some campuses call it clearance. To steal a Credo term, clearance of coming to school. I think that's really going to be important, because you don't know if you're going to be behind on financial aid until it's over. And it's only for 1 year, which is such a bad thing, because we'll get to go back to October, the year before, but this is kind of going old school with the FAFSA piece. So Kate, thanks for that insight. And I think one of the things that we need to do is make sure that we're telling the entire story. We've been talking about this entire time, but to set your board up to be knowledgeable so that they can help make decisions, you got to provide that overview, the statement of what's going on in the market. Obviously, if you check out our blog series, you check out our decision hub or anything else like that, you're going to see a ton of really good information regarding the enrollment cliff that is out there that help you set your goals accordingly. Knowing how many students are in the pipeline, those kinds of things, and what kinds of things you're going to need to do to pivot. The one nice thing, I guess, about enrollment management is that we're going to hit the road in a couple of weeks. We're going to go on the road. We're going to visit all the high schools and all the college fairs, and we're going to see all the people. But we're going to come back mid-November. We're going to have to take a deep breath, and we're going to have to learn how to pivot even more, or stay the course and pivot. I mean, I think there's going to be so much craziness because of FAFSA, not knowing where we are with how much spend we're going to have on need-based money or on our merit scholarships as well. So being able to set your goals accordingly. Andy, it's a quick turnaround right now. Students arrived last week. We just counted heads and beds, kind of thing. For some colleagues, there's a little bit there hasn't been a lot of time on Focus Forward. We got to get the last body in the bed. We've got to make sure that we're getting to where we need to be. What can enrollment leaders be doing throughout the year so that they can stay focused on the present, but look into their crystal ball? And I have a crystal ball over here. I do have one that my staff gave me at one of my institutions. Thank you, Milena Velez, wherever you are. She gave me a crystal ball because this is the one that we see enrollment in, I guess. I haven't shared it with anybody yet. But but how do you keep grounded but keep a half an eye forward, I guess, is how you do it.
That's the key piece. And it took me a while to learn that, as a VP or the chief enrollment officer. It's practice, but it's being intentional. So I ended up realizing that I was probably the one person on campus who had to keep thinking 2 and 3 years out, 2, 3, 4 years out, even in August. Of course, you're worried about the numbers and you're watching the data and you're doing that. But I had to learn to trust my directors, my assistant directors, and counselors. They were so focused on bringing in that class that I wasn't doing any good for them if I got sucked into that too. I would support them, but I always try to pull back and think, but what does it look like in a year and 2 years and 3 years? And so, how do you do it? I think you have to learn, you have to teach yourself by continuing to do that. I'm going to tell a quick story that illustrates my learning process on this. A few years back, I moved to Arkansas where there's great mountain biking. And I was like, all right, instead of just getting old and sitting on the couch and getting old, I'm going to learn how to mountain bike again. And so when I was starting, I'd ride down steep, rocky terrain, and I'd always look kind of like right in front of my front tire where the next rock was, so that I didn't hit it and wipe out. But the more I rode, the more I realized that all that was doing was putting me in a very reactionary spot. I'm reacting to what I'm seeing in the moment. And then I began to learn to look ahead further down the trail. So then somebody said, yeah, if you look down the trail, then you know what's coming and you can plan for it. And so then I would only look down the trail and I'd be like, that's cool, but sometimes I'm hitting a rock. Like I saw it out there and I hit it. Then what I learned is to be good at writing, to be good at enrollment management, you have to always be looking back and forth. Look down the trail as far as you can, but then shift your eyes right in front, back and forth, so that you're really doing both of them all the time. You're planning for what the obstacles that are coming up, and then you're reacting to them when they're there. You're reminding yourself, here it is. It looks a little different up close. We're going to take this strategy. And when I learned to do that in mountain biking, then I was able to put that into enrollment management, and it did help.
Yeah, I think a lot of times when we kind of get we dive into the minutia on a day-to-day basis, we kind of get stuck there. And when we start to share those kinds of that kind of information with our president, with our board, and our executive committees on campus, sometimes we can get caught in the moment and not thinking about, well, this might be what it is right now, but in 3 months from now, we're really going to know what's going on and how to explain that to everybody. And I think it all goes back to having a plan of action. And the three of us know all about how to plan ahead and making sure that everything's there. So we all know about assessment and analysis. We all know how to get those goals defined. I think if you're sitting in our position, you know about the segments and the targeting. What's important to your campus? Is it diversity? Is it more local students? Is it, more math students? Those kinds of things. And then developing that strategy of recruitment, marketing, bringing it all together into one big happy family. And sometimes that's difficult to do. But the one thing I think a lot of people don't do really well is that everybody has a CRM. And Kate, I'm coming to you first with this one. Everybody has a CRM now. Let's say 85% of the colleges and universities that are out there right now have a CRM, but they're starting to stack in other tech at the same time, whether it's a texting software, whether it's the behavioral intelligence platform that we offer, but they're adding all these little things, AI-induced kinds of things, but you have to be able to manage that. And it's difficult. You can't do it yourself as the enrollment leader on campus, although you should have a pretty good working knowledge of it. How much investment should we be asking our board and our president, no matter the size of the campus, for help on this tech side and building our tech stack so that we can stay competitive?
I honestly think this is paramount and how the future of enrollment management looks like. We all talk about data-driven decisions, but those data points are coming out of all these systems. And to your point, there's systems upon systems. Sometimes you have your student information system, your CRM, and then if you're like my campuses, you had multiple partners that you were bringing data into those systems. And so at my former institution, I went so far as to ask for an enrollment management technology office and create a director spot and pulled in some people from various spaces to work in that. But if you can take all of your data analysts and your folks who are really operating the systems and pushing APIs and creating all of these opportunities to work together, if you can sort of centralize those, or at minimum create a space where folks can come together to understand how all the pieces work, it's an important, very important aspect of kind of what enrollment management is going to look like in the future. We're going to provide some great data. If you're a capture partner, you're gonna get a lot of that kind of stuff. You got to figure out how you're gonna import that into your CRM or export that into a usable tool. To Andy's point, how are you gonna equip your counselors with those kinds of things, and how do you leverage all of these pieces together becomes a kind of paramount and what is next for enrollment management. So I think it's a huge opportunity, and it's a space where you have to advocate for both dollars and human resources to be able to manage those things. And I think that's going to be a key piece for folks moving into the future of EM.
Andy, and I'm going to give you exactly 45 seconds to answer this question, but enrollment management is now an art and a science, right? Building relationships is the art, right? But getting in front of the people with the right messages at the right time based upon data is the science piece of it. So bring it all together for me. How important is it that we manage not only the data, but the people at the same time?
Yeah, you have to do both. And typically you'll find is you're really good at one or the other. The real all-stars are good at both, but you take the one you're good at, but you have to develop the one that is harder for you. But we have to be doing both all the time. You've got to be a leader and building people up, but you've got to be a scientist with the data as well, and figure out then how to connect those two.
I think that's important. So, guys, thank you so much for taking the time today. And I look forward to seeing you both very soon. We'll take a cut. But thanks for joining me today, guys. And for everybody else, looking at today's takeaways, obviously invest in the process and updating your board. I think being very transparent about your information and where you think you're going is a really big deal. Leverage your data properly. Obviously, to Kate's point, you can get buried in data. But if you can understand the past, observe what is happening in real time right now, you can make really good decisions moving forward. And that's the beauty of the length of the recruitment process. It's no longer 18 months anymore. It can be 24, 36 months now as we start to dive into the sophomore and even freshmen who are interested in your institution. And always have a plan of action. So you have a strategic enrollment plan probably that's out 3, 4, 5 years probably. But what are you doing today? What can you affect to do things today? What levers can you pull? What buttons can you push? Those kinds of things. Keep that in mind, but also make sure that you're letting your board and your president and your faculty and your staff know that you have a plan of action moving forward. A lot of times, again, we get stuck in the day-to-day. We're not thinking about what this will do 3 months from now. We need to make sure that what we're doing right now moves us forward for the future as well. So join us next time, next month. We're going to unlock smarter recruitment. We're going to talk about diversifying your search strategies in a data-driven environment. So search is a big concept. And if you're headed to NACAC like we are, you're going to learn a little bit more about it. So come meet our team at NACAC in Baltimore. We're at booth 407 inside the exhibit hall. Our team of experts will be there to talk with you about what your needs are. Maybe we'll give you some free stuff. We have lots of swag that we bought for you, and stop by and say hi. I think it'll be important for you to see what's going on at Capture. And we'll see you very soon. Everybody take great, good care, and we'll talk very soon.